Well, Teri, we're here together. I'm thrilled to have
Me
you as a
too.
guest on the podcast. There's, I take a lot of different positions in doing the podcast. And one part of it is about health and longevity. Another part of it is music. And then, of course, fashion is so much a part of my DNA. And there are people in the fashion industry. And since I have 56 years of perspective, I can really see who in the industry has done certain things, what have they done, and I have curiosity about it. You really are, in a way, a historian for our time because you were fully immersed in listening to the stories and then telling the stories and transferring this information to people through different positions you've held. So if you could just give everybody an overview of how you became that person in this position.
Okay, well, I started the Wall Street Journal in 1984.
Wow.
And I started there. Actually, I covered the courthouse when Giuliani was U.S. attorney, and I spent 4 years covering airlines. And we had all those bankruptcies with TWA, Pan Am, Eastern. And that was really good preparation into covering the fashion industry. At that time, the Wall Street Journal did not cover the fashion industry. I mean, they would parachute in for stories here and there, but they really didn't cover it. But the two most successful IPOs in the on the stock market in the 1980s were Liz Claiborne and Microsoft. And so Norm Pearlstein, who was the managing editor of the Wall Street Journal at that time, said, "We want to start covering this as a business." And of course, none of the other women in the paper didn't want to do this because, women wanted to do mergers and acquisitions. They thought that this might be something that would be tricky. But at that time, the paper only had two sections, no photos. And also we only had 3 display spaces on the front page, and then 2 in the display spaces on the second front page. So I'm competing with reporters who are writing about airlines, just what I covered, the stock market, politics, everything. So I had to come up with stories that were going to be provocative and counterintuitive, and that also would appeal to men.
And smart. They had to be smart stories.
They had to be smart stories. And we had male readers. So I had to make certain that we had to make sure that it was going to be something that they were going to read all the way to the end.
Right.
So that made it tricky. So, and also I did not get story assignments.
So you had to come up.
I had to come up with all my own stories.
That's cool.
Yeah, I went to the fashion shows. I went to trade shows, but I was never a fashion critic. So when I talked to you guys on the phone, when I would call designers, I would call them to either comment on different phenomena that were happening in business, or actually to find out what was going on at your particular company. So I started my day reading Women's Wear Daily. Then I would also, of course, look on the wires to see when companies would report their earnings. And then I would just be on the phone. I mean, we're always out here, ear to the ground, talking to people in the industry, bankers, attorneys. I also used to spend one of my great ideas. I would go to stores, and I would usually go during the week, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday during the day when it was quiet, when at department stores, when salespeople were standing around with nothing to do. And then start to talk to them and find out what was going on. And since there were so many private companies, Norma, I had to figure out what are they doing. So I could figure out, I could go to like a Saks Fifth Avenue, and I would see if Ellie Tahari had a really big department in that store, and then maybe the next month or maybe the next 3 or 4 months later, the department got either larger or smaller. That would give me an idea of how well his business was doing. So you could just figure that out. And also the salespeople, there were a lot of salespeople back then, not this many roving the stores.
And really good ones.
Yeah.
Especially in the 80s. If you were on the floor, you could very well be a buyer, because buyers would actually be on the floor. So you were really talking to higher level that would never be on the floor now.
Exactly. And I identified myself as a reporter, and I didn't tell them that I was, because most of the time I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but I would ask them what's selling, what's happening. And people love to talk.
Yeah.
And when you come in with good questions and you're curious, you can't shut them up. They'll talk to you forever. Yeah. So I got a lot of good ideas. And then, I went with that. And so little by little, I built up the fashion beat and got to know people, more people to check in with. And of course, being in New York was great because at that time there were so many, retail parties and events and things to go to.
Well, the 80s were really an extraordinary time in retail, especially the department stores were the story. There was, all of the activity was there. If you wanted to go shopping, if you went to a department store, you could see everything and it would be curated in a way that you really either enjoyed or were drawn to. For me, I'm wondering, what was the first big story that you covered that brought attention to your unique perspective? Because it's not a trick. The fashion industry is so insular and it's it's almost incestuous because it's this little bubble. But for somebody to come out of like finance and in a world where nobody in the fashion industry reads the Wall Street Journal except whoever invested in a company, right? And to get everybody's interest to the point where designers, everyone knew Teri. Everyone, what is she doing? What is she writing about? Something tricked that over. What was the first big thing that you did that got that attention?
I think the story that I did on Calvin Klein. And when Calvin Klein was having a lot of problems with his business, well, actually, we didn't know he was, but he had sold his company. He and Barry Schwartz, the owners of Calvin Klein, had decided to buy Puritan Fashions. Puritan Fashions manufactured all their jeans.
Yes.
And at that time, and they ended up having junk bonds. And they used junk bonds to pay for Puritan Fashion.
Wow.
And the junk bond payments had to come, they had certain payments that they had to make at certain times. And I got hold of some SEC documents, and it looked as though it was possible that they were not going to be able to make their payments. And that might have put the company into Chapter 11 or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, Calvin Klein was also doing a lot of big ads in Vanity Fair. And so people didn't exactly know what was going on.
Right.
So so part of the deep throat I helped out, I talked to an executive of Federated Department Stores who basically told me that the jeans were not selling the way they had done in the past and that they were not making their numbers. Anyway, this was a long investigative story that I did with another reporter, and we actually had to talk to Calvin and Barry. I remember how nervous I was when we went over there to run all this by them. And that story, big splash on the front page of the Journal.
Wow.
And then after that, really, let me tell you else, which was happened that was really interesting. David Geffen, who was a dear friend of Calvin's.
Yes.
And David is the one who actually did help bail out Calvin during that time.
Yeah.
And Geffen got in touch with me after this. And because he told me that he was going to help them basically fix the business. And because he said they needed to clean up a lot of things. And so David and I spoke maybe 3 or 4 times over the next year. And he would call me, check in, and tell me what he was doing to help out Calvin and Barry. And it was just a kind of off the record conversation, but he wanted to give me a sense of what was happening.
Right.
And then because he knew that at some point the Journal would write another story, and he wanted to make certain that I knew what was going on.
Yeah. But how smart was he?
Oh yeah, it was very, it was really smart and astute. And also because he wasn't working at the company, there wasn't all that tension.
Yeah. And he wasn't talking to a fashion publication. He was talking to a business publication, which made it fit in the narrative for him. I think that, first of all, it's impressive that he knew to do that.
Well, he's a businessman. Yeah. And he had also talked to reporters all the time. And he was
but he had an ongoing story. And knowing that which you've always did, was take it from sort of a trendy conversation to a real nitty gritty. This is what's going on in the company. And I'm sure that you've seen the industry is just really built on the ups and downs.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
It's what the industry is about. And everybody thinks that it's this and you just keep flying and that it never goes up and down and it's a fantasy. And the real story about the fashion industry is the numbers. It's not just hemlines going up and down or trends, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the thing is that, remember, this fashion is all about image. And, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that's always gone on over in the industry. Anytime when you check with a new designer, business is going well, right? We're going up, and you don't really hear a lot of that strife because they want to make it look easy.
Yeah,
and
not so easy. I mean, I tell everybody here, especially through COVID, we thought, this could be, after 56 years, is this what's going to take me down? And I was like, no way, this is not. And we just hunkered down. And then sales were going up. And I said to everyone, don't get comfortable, because whatever goes up is going to come down. And what we need to do is stop it on the way down, recorrect, realign, figure out what's going on, hold it steady, and then find another reason to go up, because everybody thinks you just keep going and they never prepare when it's at the best to prepare for it being the worst. And I've learned after, many tears on my pillow, oh my God, am I going out of business again? What am I going to do? And I've never gone out of business, but I've always felt like, it could be tomorrow.
But even though you had lean times through the years, I mean, the one thing that I've always been impressed with you, just as a consumer too, is that your clothes don't go out of style. I mean, and fashion is all about planned obsolescence. Things are supposed to, you have to have a new hot trend, and the trend's supposed to come and go. And I think the one thing that you did before everybody else is that you came up with some, perennials, like the sleeping bag coat, like the jumpsuits. I mean, and I was always a fan of actually, you made shoulder pads cool, and the sweatshirt pattern. These were all things that were going to always be perennials. And that, I think, insulated you from a lot of that up and down.
I think, it's authenticity too. A lot of companies follow a trend, even though they have their brand, they then go off in a trend. For you, my question is, in my experience as a fashion student, whatever is going on in the world, whether it's a war, World War II or 1939, or what's happening in the effect on fashion, is so incredible. It tells such a story. What's your view of that? I mean, you've seen history, and not just financial history, but you've seen history and fashion. And how do you take a look at that?
Yeah, well, the thing is about trends, and I always tell anybody who's following the industry, don't just look at what's going on the runway. Look at how people are living. I think one of the best examples, remember when we got into the casual dress codes in the 1990s? Well, that had a lot to do, look what was going on. We had soccer moms. And the other thing is a lot of people just started driving Jeeps.
Yep.
And all that whole thing changed about how people were living, and it affected fashion. And all that went together. And so I think that's probably one of the most telling trends, because the casual dress code probably has been the biggest disruptor in fashion.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
I think especially for men, because the idea of wearing a suit, sort of status, they've so much based on their status, how much money they make. You know, that's how we judge men. You know, how much money is he making? What is he doing? What is he title? And then the suit kind of says, you know, I'm a big deal. I'm wearing a suit. I'm wearing this kind of a look. And then to kind of loosen the tie, take off the tie, wear casual clothes maybe once a week or whatever. And then till the tech world, just making casual clothes. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, because in the early 90s, you had that big boom of Silicon Valley. And these guys they weren't even wearing suits. I mean, they were wearing shorts, and they're working in garages and, you know, inventing things. And the suit lost its symbol as being the symbol of corporate authority.
Yeah.
Because the 80s are thinking of, you know, Wall Street and bankers and everything. The masters of the universe today are from the tech world. Mm-hmm. So all that changed. So all that accompanied with the casual dress codes. Yeah. And then, of course, fashion had to react to that. And the whole fact that, you know, people stopped wearing regular shoes. I mean, the fact that a sneaker, which used to be something for the gym and hanging out, is now something that we wear every day, all the time, with suits too.
Yeah. And then, but I do think there are things like COVID, obviously, where, I mean, we were wearing pajamas, basically. We were like half dressed because we just had this incredible, catastrophe change our lives so dramatically that we'll never be the same. I mean, we just have a new lifestyle is infused. But COVID's hard to beat in our lifetime. But Absolutely. What other world event or domestic event do you think affected fashion?
Okay, you're talking about more recently. I mean, in the last
that you can think of or you wrote about.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, I think the celebrities in Hollywood, when Giorgio Armani, in fact, I wrote about it in my first book, The End of Fashion, when Giorgio Armani came in and took over Hollywood, and the whole idea of people dressing for the red carpet. I mean, the red carpet always existed, but not in that big way. Yeah. And once Giorgio Armani started to dress all the celebrities, not just, he got the serious people like Robert De Niro and Scorsese, in addition to the women. Yeah. And that really did change. I think that changed everything, because also celebrities then became the arbiters of style. Mm-hmm. And more so, and my second book is called Hijacking the Runway, How Celebrities Stole the Spotlight from Fashion Designers. And you know, as a designer yourself, how important, you always had a celebrity following, but now how the celebrities have so much to do with what we wear and influencing different trends.
Yeah. I mean, so much so that celebrities are the ones who really into brands are probably making more money through these brands than they are through whatever their original, whether it's as an actor or a musician.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they take it very seriously. And I think social media obviously has taken that whole thing even further. So the celebrities are influencers. They sell things. They're selling things on social media. I mean, I think Jennifer Lopez is like the ultimate entrepreneur.
Oh,
She just give her something to sell, and that girl's going to sell it, right?
Well, J-Lo, let me also tell you, I did a chapter in my second book about Jennifer Lopez and her effect with Coty, the cosmetics company, with her fragrances. And those celebrity fragrances, which first came out in the 80s, were kind of dead. And then she shows up with J-Lo Glow, and really right after September 11th, during that time, and this thing took off. And it just made her a big mogul. And also it actually saved Cody at that particular time. Yeah. And she came out with all these different iterations of that. And, she is incredible arbiter. Mm-hmm. And back to what you said about the fact that celebrities make more money in fashion endorsing products. Remember now we've got, with all the streaming services, the movie stars don't get those big paydays that they used to get. I mean, you think about Cameron Diaz and Jennifer Lopez getting $20 million on a movie. That doesn't happen anymore. So they have to find a way to monetize their fame, and they're doing it through fashion.
Yeah. And the same with musicians, unless you're on the road. Oh, yeah. You're really not making the amount of money, and they have so many products they're selling that it tells you revenue is not coming through their world, and selling things really is. I think the Kardashians are brilliant examples of taking that commercial entrepreneurial kind of approach to, this is who we are. We're going to look the part. We're going to be the part. We're going to live the part. And I think they've taught everybody a lesson on what the social media / lifestyle celebrity, whether you can sing or have a talent like that.
Yeah, well, they didn't even have that. It was a reality show, took them to that next level.
Yeah.
And it took them a while to figure it out. I mean, they did a line with Sears that was like a disaster, but then they did figure it out. And Kim Kardashian has that Skims brand, which I think it's got something like a $3 billion valuation. And everyone's talking about that's going to probably be the next fashion public company. Yeah. And this is basically just based on her persona. Mm-hmm. I mean, Spanx was already out before then, but she took it to another level.
I mean, I think they can do any product they want, and any celebrity really that can sell things and feel genuine about doing it. I don't know. I think it depends on the personality. I think they can sell anything, and obviously put a good team together to have a good product.
Of course, yeah.
To continue that kind of interest, public interest. And I think it's great. I love the idea of being an entrepreneur. I think that they are business women. Most of them are women, absolutely, and they're business women. And that's really, you can sing and you can act, but if you're a businesswoman, I think that that's really a big deal. That's taking all of your assets and putting it to good use, and not just because you're female. Do you know what I mean? Not just because you're a woman. This is a success. Well, yeah, it is a combination.
Yeah, but they look great. I mean, they're a perfect. The branding, the personal branding that they have. I mean, look at everything that they've started, Norma. I mean, the center parted hair, the eyelashes. Okay, the curvaceous figures. I mean, all that is, comes. That's part of their brand, and and it really works, and people relate to it.
Yeah, but I think, I think somebody like Rihanna, who is just incredibly talented. I mean, she's gorgeous. And I think there's something about her soul that just says, this is a really great person. Like, there's something really special about her.
Well, she's relatable, but also, let me tell you that her cosmetics, and I was looking for a new foundation. And I was at Ulta and I was talking to one of the people, and she said, have you tried Fenty, which is Rihanna's? And, not only do they have 40 shades of the foundation, but they also have 40 shades of the concealer. So you get an exact match instead of just 4 or 5 to choose from.
And she was
really smart product.
And she was involved. Like you just totally know that she was. So I think there's a part of it. I mean, the Kardashians are like a machine. They can, but then there are personalities who have a certain style about them and a certain something that you feel, I actually feel she's involved with that. That, I think she really is. J-Lo is doing so many things. I don't know how she's involved with it all, but I'm sure the girl's got the energy to do it.
Yeah, but also too, when you see her on Instagram, you know, she's an incredible spokeswoman. Of course, we can't forget Sarah Jessica Parker, who is another one who has just tremendous relatability. And, you know, from the Sex and the City franchise, she just took that and went with it. And as you know, your Diana dress, that dress that you've had, tell me, how long have you had that dress on the line?
So I did it for the first time in 74. Without a bodysuit underneath. And then I did it again late 80s into the 90s. It has usually has like a 5 to 10 year kind of thing. And then I did it again it's like 6 years ago, and it with a bodysuit inside so that it's fit. And I'm surprised that it does so well and that it has such a following.
It looks good on everybody. I
was at an event this weekend and there were 3 Dianas and I was like, the girl just keeps going out and I love it. And Sarah Jessica Parker, who's been through the years, she's been wearing my clothes and we just sort of cooperate with them when they need things. And I didn't even know she was using the Diana. I think she bought it at Saks and wore it. And we were having such anxiety prior to that because we couldn't fill all the orders. There were thousands and thousands of orders. This was after COVID, where everybody was going out again. Every girl that had been trapped in her house wanting to meet a guy is now, oh my God, I'm out. And Diana went to weddings and she was doing everything.
Yeah,
and we were like, oh my God, we don't have enough fabric. And we figure it out. We get it all together. And then we see Sarah Jessica Parker on
and just like that. Yes.
And she's wearing the Diana.
And in that light blue.
And she's wearing the Diana.
So really
and we're like, oh my God, what are we going to, and it was overwhelming. But the universe was very kind to us because we just got more of that fabric in that color. So we were able to kind of keep up with it. But it was really, she's powerful.
She's very powerful, but also the fact that dress looks good on a lot of women, the asymmetrical cut, and it's got the ruching, which is very forgiving.
And the bodysuit that holds in. And I think the other aspect of it is age in clothes, what's appropriate, what do you wear at what age, which drives me crazy because I don't think you should ever act your age. I think if you act your age as a kid, it's not going to help you. And if you act your age at my age, it's not going to help you. And so what you wear is so much a part of the story you want to tell.
Yeah, well, that's the first thing that people see.
Yeah, and on her, because now she's not that first character, but she's a different character. She has life experience. She looks older. She's feminine and fun, and she's wearing a dress that is not typically the kind of dress somebody in an older age group would wear, but she looked amazing to say, like, why can't everybody wear this?
And also she was on a date when she wore I don't know if you saw that segment. She was on a date and she actually wore it with a jacket.
Yeah.
And then she took the jacket off. But when we saw that full length and everybody said, wow. And I actually remember seeing, I was like, I've seen this dress before. I wonder if that is, but I didn't really, and then when I looked it up and I said, of course, this is Norma's dress.
But she, like these other celebrities, it's so much their persona tells a story, where a designer, as you know, is is a persona, has a story, but for me, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about the woman. I'm thinking about my job is to make her happy, to make her feel good. It's not about me and how I'm feeling in the clothes. So our story is very different. Some brands really want the designer to be the celebrity. However, I'm curious about your thoughts about the fact that these design directors, creative directors are moving in and out of the celebrity positions, and their lifespan as creative directors in a lot of these big brands is very short. And so the idea of them as celebrities also is shortening the lifespan of the celebrity designer. What are your thoughts about that?
That's interesting. Okay, let's talk about first Michael Kors. Michael Kors, the designer who became a celebrity because of Project Runway. And he's had a long, this took him to Wall Street and turned his company into a multi-billion-dollar brand. Okay, you think about Tom Ford, another designer who became a celebrity, also first with Gucci and then on with his Tom Ford brand. Well, now you've got people going in and out. You know, Raf Simons was at Calvin Klein for 2 years.
It's like
they're in and out,
moving so fast. I think, Michael Kors, first of all, is so funny and entertaining that he is a celebrity. If he wants to be, he could just have his own show because he's so hysterical. But I do think that designer, that type of designer is really quite different now. I mean, if you think about Tom Brown, he's brilliant. The guy is just so talented, but he doesn't look for the spotlight. He's a very kind of low-key guy.
Yeah, well, he's low-key. I think of Philip Lim the same way. They're very low-key, and that's
craft different. The craft is really the importance of it.
But they still have billboards and people who, Amy Fine Collins wears a lot of Tom Brown. You see her out. And then he's got other celebrities who wear his clothes. So
it's the celebrities, but the designer versus the celebrity entrepreneur is different. We're in a different phase right now. And like I said, Tom isn't promoting himself as a celebrity. And, even Tom Ford just checked out. Like, I'm moving on. I have something else to do.
Yeah, he's back to making movies.
And so I think all of the European houses are also creating this shorter lifespan for the celebrity creative director. So the question is, what do you think? Is it the celebrities now that's taken over the fashion industry, or how do you see where we are?
I kind of think it is the tail wagging the dog. I mean, that's why I wrote that book about it. Now, okay, Gucci was at a peak during COVID, and then Alessandro Michele so suddenly was dismissed. And I think that these brands are trying to keep finding new people who are going to keep the brand fresh, but they still want to have, they want to have a certain identity, but the identity, as you're saying, gets lost because you keep switching designers.
What happens is the customer changes because the design direction changes. And I think it's incredibly important for the brand to have an authenticity
and some consistency too,
because then and obviously they can't be afraid of the up and down. They have to sort of mitigate how down, but it is a tempestuous time.
Yeah, it is indeed. And the other thing is too is everyone is so competitive, and I think that there's a lot of second guessing. Because now you've got a lot of these designer brands are now parts of these big conglomerates like LVMH. Yeah. And so obviously they are trying to make certain that, everything is going in full cylinders. And so they have to move around a lot. So I agree with you. It is whiplash for the consumer because you see, one creative director and then it's going in another direction. But also, Norma, don't forget, I mean, at Prada, all these companies, they're still selling their basic accessories. They don't, those fashion lines that we see at fashion shows
are minimal.
Yeah, that's a very small part of their business. And as I know, one executive used to say, a fashion show is like making a movie to sell popcorn.
Yeah.
That they do all
the handbags and the shoes.
Exactly.
Are really,
And
it's incredible that it really is the fact. Most people don't realize that it may be an item here or there, but it's really handbags and shoes that make the real money for a brand, or a scent, that really do that. And I wonder what that says for the fashion industry. Is there, do we have too much product out there?
Yes, way too much product. But the other thing is too, is that the industry is kind of schizophrenic. It has to be, because the thing is, you don't have trends that everybody's following at the same amount of time. Then that means is that you've got all these little cleavages. People who want this look, people who want to be edgy, people who want to be more feminine. And so every brand is trying to chase all these people. Mm. That's why I'm always telling people there will never be another like Marc Jacobs or Michael Kors or someone who's like really big, who's able to sell in all those different categories, because consumers don't shop that way. People buy high, low. Yeah. People, and they're not necessarily, some of the status pieces, the handbags, they still have some cachet, but not the cachet that they've had in the past. And then, of course, the big disruptor being fast fashion, which has thrown another wrench into all this. But it does make it a really hard time. I mean, you think of when you guys came up, you had the support of department stores. You at least had a chance that you were in Bloomingdale's. Mm-hmm. Bloomingdale's could introduce you. Yeah. They could help you, get a leg up, and so consumers could keep up. Now, you can't. It's moving so fast and in so many different directions.
So let's talk about AI. Yes. Tell me how you got enraptured in AI.
Yeah, I was at a trade show in London, and Ken Pilot introduced me to this woman, Purva Gupta, who started Lily AI. She's the CEO of this company, and she was telling me that we basically bridge the gap between consumer speak and what designers say. A designer calls something, navy athleisure, French terry, when the consumer is typing in like, navy sweatshirt or sweatsuit. Right. And so there's this disconnect. And what was happening that she had noticed was that people were going shopping online, but not being able to find what they were looking for because maybe they weren't describing it correctly. Mm-hmm. Now she's from India, and she thought maybe this was a immigrant problem. Maybe I'm not speaking English correctly anyway, she's an economist. She connected with a woman who is an engineer, and they got together. Both of them are from India, but they met each other like 8 years ago, and then they decided they were going to tackle this problem. And Lily AI has just taken off. And the thing that is really cool about this is that they hired, in addition to all these engineers, the smart thing that they did is they hired some fashion experts. And in fact, they found some of them like on Craigslist. So it wasn't anything.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, she said they put in ads on Craigslist and said, we're looking for stylists, et cetera. And they found people about 8 years ago. And they've kept this same group of people, I think like 20 or so. And those style people help them actually do the initial labeling. Mm-hmm, and they started out to tag what things were. Yeah. And they would sit there, and they weren't looking at products, but they're looking at photos that the stores are providing. So the store, if it's, J. Crew or Bloomingdale's or whatever it is, the store is giving them all their SKUs, the stock keeping units and the photos. And then they sit and decide, okay, is that a bishop sleeve or is that a puff sleeve? They decide, they did all the tagging. And so then the machine learning, it got better and better at this.
Yeah, it's a training.
And it took it, but you can use this not only just to help people find when they're shopping online. Did you notice now when you shop online, not only when you type in something in a particular store, then they have a drop down label that they ask you, do you want 3/4 sleeves? Do you want a V-neck? So they're asking you, they're trying to figure out all these attributes to help you narrow the assortment so you can get what you want. But then the AI, they were telling me that's just the search engine optimization. That's part of it. But also then a retailer can use this to figure out when they're going to do markdowns. And also they can also see what you looked for that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then they can say, oh, okay, so we see that a lot of women were looking for capri pants and, we didn't have.
Yeah.
And or else we call them crop pants, but they didn't have what. So then that helps you as a designer decide, oh, okay, well, we need to go into this area. It also helps you figure out when you're going to do the markdowns. Yeah. So the AI is just, and you keep from getting, it's not haphazard.
It's extraordinary. I think, the real benefit of AI is that its best asset, I think, is personalization. It really has the ability to personalize purchases, but even in education, where I think, and medicine, where I think real magic is going to happen is think of all the kids who are not privileged, who do not have a privileged education, who can learn in the same way as everybody else and then have it personalized where, oh, they're not doing so well at math. I'm going to give them a little more attention. They're doing great in science. I'm going to create a project. That's what AI is going to be able to do for education. So the personalization part of knowing what you like and focusing in on all
and
of
that
the
attention,
things
giving you that attention, yes.
And seeing these things pop up. I mean, some of it's a little creepy, I have to say, and I love AI, but when I am going somewhere and I'm going to go into Uber and I'm going somewhere that I haven't been to in maybe 8 months and the address pops up, I think to myself, okay, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, because you wonder, is somebody watching me? How did they figure that
out? Did they get in my calendar? I don't know. But and you know what? I don't care. If you get me there, I don't really care either. But I do think the idea of personalized attention, you and I are women. We have women's bodies, but we have different tastes and different things, right? We're gonna, some things we'll love the same way, but it's sort of analyzing behavior and then feeding that information to each of us with an individualized perspective. I mean, that's really pretty fantastic.
Well, it also avoids, the other thing is too, is that because of this because it really helps tailor the assortments, it, to me, helps eliminate waste.
Yeah.
Because as a designer, how you guys do all the sampling. Let's try a little of this. Let's run over here. Let's run.
Yeah.
Just think if you have the ability to be able to zero in on certain things.
Yeah.
But you will not just do what everybody else does. Because see, that would be, a lot of people say, well, this is going to make everything look alike. That's a problem that's happening in fashion, that everybody's having the same, beige and navy, and they've got the same color schemes. But somebody who's creative like you can take this info and then even go further and still do your individual Norma Kamali.
So you have the data that sort of
to back up.
Yeah, because I think designers do their best when they're given a specific challenge. So, for instance, somebody's getting married and they want a gown. Well, I'm gonna ask you a million questions. What do I need to know about what you want for the gown? Then I know my parameters. Now I can make you happy. I can do all of these things. So if I have all of the information for my collection, I can feel good because I'm going to be in the right place but there's no limit to how creative I can be in that place unless all the data says this is a time where no creativity, being creative in less is better, right? So it's like, what are the signals and do you pay attention to them? I think in our personal lives, the more of that we have, that really is the sign of convenience for the future.
Oh, absolutely. Hearing aids, for example. Okay, my husband wears hearing aids, and I remember when he first looked at them because he had been a motorcyclist, and he told me we first started dating. He said, "I can't hear." So he got really excited because he's in tech. He got to look at all these different hearing aids. Now, the ones that it's all controlled on your phone. And you can go to a particular venue, and if you're at a restaurant, you can tune out the noise behind you. If you're at a music, all these, you can do all that personalization on the hearing aids on your telephone.
Yeah.
So this is really cool. And I think that it's also great because, older people have had such a stigma about wearing hearing aids. But now you're seeing that this is something, you first thing, you can't even see them.
Yeah, and it's customized
and
because
it's totally
you control it. So what design do you think, and it could be, in history or in the last 50 years or whatever, what design, what idea, what concept, through fashion history would you say was the most revolutionary for women and the most revolutionary for men?
For women. Okay, well, just unisex. First thing I think about is jeans. I still think that jeans and denim have been, you've used them in every fabric. Mm-hmm. You use denim for every type of garment.
Right.
And they are washable and they're also sustainable because they basically never wear out.
Yeah.
And so I would say that jeans are perhaps, that would be one category. But
it's American fashion.
It's American fashion.
And think about, what do we have as American fashion? That's number one. That really is part of our history.
Yeah. And they just appeal to everybody. And they're also almost like a global ambassador for the U.S. Because it's jeans. So I would say jeans in particular, but I'm just trying to think, you're talking about one particular garment.
Or a movement or something. I think that there are different times in history and fashion that have made
sneakers. Yeah. Sneakers. I would definitely, the running trends, sneakers were something that came out of people jogging.
Yeah.
First, it was a jogging thing. It was also about, it was sports.
Right.
And then it became something for comfort. Remember the subway strike in New York? And that's when women started changing shoes, wearing the sneakers.
That's right.
And that started a whole different movement. And then look at what happened with all the streetwear, the rappers. Then that turned sneakers into real fashion. And now you go into Bergdorf's, you see there's a Balenciaga sneaker, there's a Gucci sneaker, there's a,
every luxury brand
has every high. Who thought you'd be paying $1,100, $1,500 for a pair of sneakers?
No,
not me, but I'm saying this though. But and it really just took over. This also, when you talk about COVID, I think a lot of women got so used to being barefooted at home. And then, do I really have to get back into these heels again?
I know.
And you will see it. And we were in Italy. I hadn't been to Italy for several years. We were in Milan this summer. And I was, my eye is starting to get used to seeing women wearing, and they wore, the Italians, they're very chic about it. And they'll wear the low top sneakers, but they're wearing sneakers with all kind of dresses.
Yeah.
And it looks fine.
Yeah.
And you get used to it.
It looks great.
And you get used to it. So I would say sneakers that's a really revolutionary product.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. we look at fashion, and I remember in the early 90s when the dress codes went away and everybody said, oh my God, people are never going to dress up again. People are never going to buy expensive clothes again. Well, what happened? They made sneakers expensive. You all find ways to make it, and that's what makes it exciting, because you don't know what's coming next. Now, I'm curious. I'm going to ask you this, because I am a fan of fur. I've been a fur wearer, and not necessarily, I'm not talking about like mink coats, but I'm thinking about shearling, and I'm thinking about, even leather. I mean, now a lot of you hear people saying they don't want to use leather. Right. So, where do you think we're going to come out on that?
It's really hard for me. I'm a city girl, so other than my dog, I didn't have a cow or a chicken around. I love my animals. I've had 12 dachshunds and I just adore them. And in my mind, every animal has the same relationship with other animals the way I have with my dog. I swear that my dog knows everything I'm thinking and saying. And I believe even the deer out at the beach have a relationship with their family that way. And everybody thinks I'm crazy, but in my mind, I believe animals have this connection and are gentle souls and even the most ferocious. So there's that part of me that says, and this is the reason I can't eat meat. I don't feel good when I eat meat. That's what started it. But then I think, I just don't think I can eat flesh. I feel like I'm eating flesh when I eat meat. So this is my own, whatever is in my head. I don't know why. You can have a steak next to me and I don't care. I don't judge. I don't care. But to me, it's like chewing on flesh. So I can't go there. However,
how about leather shoes?
However, when it comes to animals, depending on how the fur or how the leather or what the setup is, because some of it is not good and not appropriate and not done properly. But some animals, sometimes they have to thin out a herd, or there's too much of something, or there's
that happens in nature,
and so there's an inevitable thinning, and so I remember buying a zebra carpet in the early 70s, and I still have my zebra carpet. I love it. I love the look of zebras. I've made zebra t-shirts. I think they're artistically just so beautiful. So for some reason, I believe that, and I did some research, that zebras are thinned, and so these hides are available, not because they were just hunted, but that there was inevitable time that they're hunted to either thin out a herd. I still, in my mind, think those zebras have families and they communicate with each other. And so I'm very confused. But I'm not even sure if this is real leather, these shoes, but I tend not to wear a lot of leather, and I tend not to use fur. But I did for many years in the 70s. I would get hides, or I'd deconstruct some fur pieces and reconstruct them from a creative perspective. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I feel like Native Americans have done incredible things with hides. and made these beautiful clothes. And I collect some things that Native Americans have made. I have a jingle dress. They're so beautiful, and it's antelope hide or deer hide.
But the thing is, but my point is now everybody's saying, okay, they call it vegan leather. And now, so you've got all these things that are pleather, whatever. Those use a lot of petroleum.
Yeah.
And so that's why, so when people get into this, it's like you said, it's one of those areas that is, when you think about sustainability, and they're talking about, well, if you're killing an animal, but if you're causing all the carbon footprint, it's the same thing. So it's a hard situation.
I think the problem is we want morally to do the right thing, right? We feel responsible to do the right thing. It's the same with the electric car. Like if we want to save the planet, what are we doing with gas versus the electric car? And then we have the battery. And oh my God, the battery is doing, So the intention, the moral intention is confused with the practical, like how many people are out of work as a result of this practical experiment.
Yes, it's really, it's mind blowing. And I also think about, fast fashion and being made in a lot of these countries where people are not getting, the wages are really low, child labor and everything. But at the same time, so many countries that really gave people a leg up to at least start to get, to have. So it is confounding.
And manufacturing, is a real dilemma. So, my sample room, making clothes is just so much a part of my love, and it's everything that I'm about. And so I'm always wanting to expand and have new factories. And of course, I want to know what's happening, what's going on in the factory. And the rule of thumb, basically, for me has always been if the garments look good, if the samples come back and look good, you can bet that factory is a good factory. And so that's when I then decide, okay, I'm going to get on a plane and see what's going on. I'm not going to name the country, but not too long ago in the summer, I wanted to expand production, and I got beautiful samples back. So excited. And I went to the factories, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe the circumstance. All of these beautiful clothes were made in places that if anybody would have gone there and said, Norma Kamali makes her clothes here, that is awful. And I talked to them and asked them what the potential opportunity would be to make some of these changes. And I realized that these people work really hard. They really want to better their lives. They want to have better lives. The circumstance to them is not as awful as it is to me. And that they're so ambitious and their skill set is so good that in time, they're going to be at a different place. And unfortunately, I'm not ready to work with them at this time. And then I'm conflicted by saying, well, if I help them now by giving them work, maybe they could get to that next place. But in the end, conditions have to be different.
No,
right?
It's crazy. And if anyone would go to a factory where they make sneakers and you see the gases that come out of all that rubber and stuff, you would never want to marry.
The glue smell.
Yeah, exactly. All
like,
that, the pollution. So it's crazy, but it's
the dilemma of our conscience and our moral convictions, and we have to find the right way. But I'm happy that we had this time together. I really, I enjoyed the conversation. I think we have to do more of it. Yeah, sure.
I love to, anytime, Norma, I get with you, we always
get out here. For hours.
Yeah, we can just go on forever and ever and just talk about different things. And but as you're saying, we all want to be responsible, and we want to be responsible consumers. We want to be responsible manufacturers and retailers, but it's crazy and it makes it hard. But I'm glad that, because the more we know, the more that we know that, there's ways to try to go after some of these problems, and trying to perhaps, working with governments. I mean, all this, it's a huge issue.
My dream would be, obviously, to produce more in the USA. I produce in the USA, and I would like to increase that. I believe we have a migrant issue that we have to deal with. And I believe if we had a little bit more structure in place and we could see who would be candidates to be manufacturing, and putting migrants with manufacturers and training them to be productive and helping build our manufacturing in this country. So my dream is that all these empty buildings, or these empty office buildings, that half of the building could be manufacturing, then 2 or 3 floors for daycare, for dentists and MD services.
People need all
this. And
then
above that, the people, they transform the offices into apartments. And so the workers that are working in the factories downstairs, in the manufacturing downstairs, have this daycare and all of this here, and they live up there. And I would love to find somebody that would do that, because we need manufacturing in the USA desperately.
Yes.
So that's my dream ending this conversation. If it could only happen.
Yeah, if it could only happen. And also you wouldn't have to do with the commuting. Just think, you get rid of all that.
And having daycare, having medical, having dentists, having all of those, the early years of school, having all of that in one building and making it an efficient, dignified place where people could be trained and become productive citizens, hopefully. But I think I'm dreaming.
No, you're not dreaming. Let me tell you, it's a good dream. It's a good dream, and it's all one that we'd all love to have.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, thank you for this. Was so fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love hanging out with you. Yes.